Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Chris Janata. I'm the president of the Park Forest Historical Society. And on behalf of our entire board of directors, I want to welcome you to the Park Forest Hall of Fame induction for 2023. We're delighted to be back in Freedom Hall for an in-person celebration. The past 3 years just haven't been the same. So to look around and see so many smiling faces and shake your hands and give the hugs, it makes this a very happy day for us indeed. This Hall of Fame began in 1989 and then became an annual event in 1994. This is the 29th annual and 30th overall Hall of Fame induction. For the past 3 years, due to the pandemic, our induction ceremonies have been launched on YouTube. So if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend checking those out. We've also been adding other educational programming out there, so it's well worth a visit. In addition to the Park Forest Local History Collection and Archive, the Society operates the 1950s Park Forest House Museum and several educational programs every year on Park Forest topics. We also hope that you've noticed our displays at Village Hall recently, which will continue throughout the year on various topics in Park Forest history as we approach the 75th anniversary of the village in both August of this year and February of 2024. If you see those in Village Hall, take a moment to read them. We hope to reuse those displays in our museum throughout the 75th anniversary celebrations. I'm sure many of you were expecting to see Jane Nickel up here today instead of myself. Sorry. Jane apologizes for not being here today as she had a prior family commitment, but she's left the keys to the castle in my hopefully more than capable hands. This is the only Hall of Fame that Jane has missed since we've started in 1989, so I personally thank her for all the work that she's done up until now and including today's event. I want to thank her and Jerry Schnee for their work on the program booklet and the biographies that you're all reading there in your hands, and for all the board members of our board for putting so much hard work into today's celebration. I also want to thank Terry Medhurst and former Historical Society President Therese Goodrich for their extremely generous donations that make our marquee events such as this one possible. Speaking of our continuous fundraising efforts, the Society thanks Village President John Vanderbilt, Village of Park Forest Board, and the Village Manager Tom Mick for once again providing us our Matching Challenge grant. We're very happy to announce that we have once again met our $5,000 fundraising goal, which means that we've raised $5,000 from our friends and members this fiscal year. A very sincere thank you to all of you who help us do that. This matching grant truly helps us keep our doors open. We also thank the Park Forest Public Library Board for their once-a-year donation of $1,650, which supports our archive office, which we use to preserve, protect, and teach Park Forest history from. The archive collection was a library project originally supported with public funds, which the Society took over management of several years ago. It is still partially owned by the library, so we very much appreciate that they still feel a responsibility to support it and us with this vote of confidence. We are always telling the story of Park Forest history. That's why today is one of my favorite days of the year. I get the easy job of sitting here and listening to the personal recollections of fine park foresters such as these, and to learn about the great accomplishments that they've made to this village. So, in order to get to those stories just a little bit faster, it's high time that I stop talking and yield to the next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I would invite our mayor-elect, Mr. Joe Woods, up to the stage to give a welcome on behalf of the Village of Park Forest.
I believe Therese Goodrich had something to do with that, because I did not know I was going to be speaking today. However, thanks a lot, Therese. Okay. What I will say today is that what an honor it is to, number one, be the new mayor-elect for Park Forest. And I must say that I think the reason why I'm standing here today is because I knew one thing, that if I was going to interject myself into this new community that I moved into, I was going to have to really reach out to those founders. I was going to have to get the stories of what Park Forest is, what Park Forest is about, and what Park Forest will be. What a beautiful list of people to have learned from. Anyone who knows me, they know that I'm all about asking questions. I ask more questions than I make statements, quite frankly. And so again, you don't want to necessarily hear me too much, but I want to say I'm moved. I guess you can hear it in my voice. I'm really moved from having to learn so much about Park Forest. And so I welcome you all. Hello, Park Forest. And the beautiful thing about it is that we can now meet in person and really kind of share our experiences and continue to share our experiences. Thank you very much. You see, I listen to Therese Goodrich. Whatever she says, any trustees that are in the building, I would like to honor you. I think I'm looking at, there you go, Tiffany Graham, Therese Settles. Also our trustee-elect, John Moore. And I don't think I'm missing anyone else, but moving forward, I gotta say I'm really excited to work with this new board, and I promise you, and we promise you, that we will do our best to serve you in the way that we believe that you deserve. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Before we get to the list of this year's nominees and inductees, we have a little unfinished business that we would like to take care of. As I mentioned, the past 3 years we had done all of our Hall of Fame ceremonies on YouTube. So all of the inductees from those years did not get to come up here and sit on the stage and wear the flowers and hear the applause when they won. We would like to correct that here today. So I am going to read through some brief biographies of each of those 3 years' winners. As your name is called, or if you are the loved one of an inductee, please stand if you are able. And I'll run through the lists. And if we could hold applause until the end of each year, we'll get these people the recognition in person that they so richly deserve. So I start with 2020. And Catherine Katie Felt Armstrong. Katie Armstrong raised 10 children in the village and was a passionate supporter for all things green. She volunteered for the food co-op, led a women's peace protest group, volunteered for Thorn Creek, the Park Forest Environment Commission, and got a shutoff valve for the oil pipeline next to the Park Forest wetlands. She also served a term on the village board and was involved in the Green Party, to name a few of her contributions. June Defoe. June moved to Park Forest in 1952 with Hal and their 3 children and lived in their home for 57 years. For more than 30 years, she was a kindergarten teacher at School District 163. She taught Sunday school at Hope Lutheran and in 1997 became an active member of Faith United. She was a den mother for Cub Scouts and a volunteer in the Coke Shack for the youth baseball leagues. Anna Bonita Dillard and Roy Dillard. Roy is here today. Roy and Bonita moved to Park Forest in 1968 and began a life of service to the community. Bonita was active with the Homemakers, Boy and Girl Scouts, taught Sunday school, and with Roy was a Kiwanis Club president and a village trustee for 14 years. Both were active in Fellowship for Action and the Gavin Foundation. Roy ran an exterminating business, coached youth football, and was instrumental in the implementation of the Dr. King Room here in Freedom Hall. He continued to volunteer for School District 163 and hosted the Dr. King concerts here at Freedom Hall. Bonita and Ray raised Marla and Rod here in the village. We lost Bonita in 2022, but again, Ray is here with us today. Roy, I'm sorry. Janet Fiorenzo. As owner of Tower Cleaners for over 22 years, Janet supported activities with the village, its churches, and its organizations. She cleaned countless items for School District 163, the library, and the police department, as well as altar linens and robes for all faiths. She also donated her services to preserve rugs, doll clothing, and vintage garments for the Historical Society, and donated clothing and bedding items to the Veterans Closet. She was honored in 2015 by Tallgrass for her commitment to the arts, in 2016 by the local Speakers, Publishers, and Authors Association, and was the first person named to win Park Forest Business Person of the Year in 2009. She was also given that award in 2019 and 2021. Edwin Pfizer. A resident of Park Forest for 41 years, Ed Pfizer served on numerous boards and commissions for both Cook County and the village, and became the first chair of the Veterans Commission for the village. Among the projects he administered was the Veterans Closet and Resource Center, which provided both free goods and services to all former armed services personnel. Ed Pfizer enlisted in the Marine Corps in World War II and was a member of the Montfort Point Marines. His wartime experience is recorded in the Society's GI Stories in a GI Town oral history project, and by the Pritzker Military Museum in Chicago, which runs on our YouTube channel. In 2011, the Montfort Point Marines were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, which they received at a ceremony in their honor in 2012. Following his military service, Ed worked as an optometrist, a Chicago police officer, a teacher, before eventually opening his own business. A civil rights hero, a military service hero, and a national treasure were the words used in his nomination. Edwin Pfizer passed away just before he could accept his nomination. Bruce Ziegel. Bruce began service with the village through numerous programs with recreation and parks before he even graduated from Rich East in 1977. Through his service as a volunteer member of the fire department, he found life's work, which employed him for the rest of his 40 years protecting the community. He became a paramedic in 1980 and went full-time in 86, earning a degree in fire management from SIU and taught fire-related courses here at Prairie State. In 2013, he was named Fire Marshal, a post he held until he retired in 2017. One of his greatest accomplishments was his dedication to the department by keeping it outfitted with the best equipment through procurement of more than $1.5 million in grant funding. Bruce and his wife Julia both grew up in Park Forest and raised their children here. They regret they could not be with us today to receive their in-person congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the class of 2020. Moving on to 2021 with Ann Hernandez. Public safety, public welfare, and public schools were the three elements of the late Ann Hernandez's public life. Ann moved here in 1963, attended Mohawk, and graduated from Rich East. After leadership training at GSU and a National College of Education, she quickly became involved in school affairs and was elected to the board of District 163 at the age of 22. She organized residents to renovate playground equipment at Black Hawk School, and in 1972 was co-chairman of a Citizens Committee planning desegregation for the Illinois Office of Education. Also in 1972, she organized the Light Brigade, demonstrating a secure traffic light at Western and Beacon Boulevard to help facilitate the movement of school buses. In 1976, she was named director of the Center of Economic Development Authority, which served more than 10,000 persons every year. Throughout her life, she campaigned for safety and pollution controls on trucks using Sauk Trail as passage to and from I-57, and contributed numerous articles to the Park Forest Reporter and Park Forest Star. Married and the mother of 2 children, Joseph and David, she passed away in 2008 at the age of 61. Dr. Jerome Karish. Dr. Karish and wife Sheila moved to Park Forest in 1957, and for the next 16 years, he became involved with the health aspects and civic affairs of the community. He became a vital force in the political life of the community. The Karishes were parents of 5 sons: Ira, Sigmund, Morris, Isidore, and Dean. In 1967, he opposed the 9-hole golf course in Central Park, preserving the space for future generations, youth baseball, and Freedom Hall. He established Community Now to address issues of poverty and education. He was active in women's health education and numerous political projects. He co-founded an anti-war group, Democrats for a Free Debate, in Vietnam, and ran as a delegate to the 1968 Democratic Convention pledged to Robert Kennedy. In 1974, Dr. Karish moved to Israel and did cancer research before returning to general practice at Tel Aviv University. He passed away in 2003. Wan Liang. The late Wan Liang was the longest standing card holder in the history of the Park Forest Library and was a revered presenter for 18 years at the library's Potpourri series, sharing expertise on his world travels, the National Park Service, and the world of Norman Rockwell. In 1958, Liangs were the first family to move in the Lincolnwood subdivision. He and his wife Olivia joined Faith United in November of 1957, where he was a consistent supporter until he passed away in early 2021, just before he could receive notice of his nomination. Colonel Milan Plavsic. Under his leadership as our second public safety director, we now know as Chief of Police, the police force grew from the 9 officers he inherited in 1952 to 19 officers in 1962. He designed new uniforms with pie-shaped patches featuring the clock tower to instill pride. During his 11-year tenure, Colonel Plavsic was an innovative leader in the field of law enforcement, serving as president of the Illinois Chiefs of Police Association and technical advisor for the Illinois Police Training Academy at U of I. He was the first recipient of the JC's Citizen of the Year Award in 1961. He was instrumental in the building of the police facility at Lakewood and Forest, urged the village board to hire a psychologist to deal with juveniles, and created the police response to the first African American families moving into the village from 1959 into the 60s, ensuring a peaceful integration. After retiring in 1963, Plavsic continued public service in youth protection and was a township supervisor for 8 years. When he heard about the Historical Society in the late 1990s, he sent a letter reflecting on his time of service, along with photos and articles. Colonel Plavsic died on February 15, 1998, at the age of 91. John Logan Scott. John Scott was the second village manager for Park Forest, serving from 53 to 66. Park Forest was his favorite job because of the newness and spirit of the created community. Coming when the village was so new, Scott helped set the budget for the government, planned and helped raise funds for the 3 public safety building complex, as well as helping oversee construction of the village hall on Forest Boulevard. In 1959, he was instrumental in peacefully integrating Park Forest by working with village president Robert Dinerstein and the Commission on Human Relations to draft the now famous Statement of Village Policy regarding integration of Negro families. He helped negotiate purchase of the water plant from ACB, was instrumental in construction of Orchard Drive's extension of Lincoln Highway, and was involved in the referendum to build the library and the Park Forest Rec Center at Westwood Junior High. John Scott passed away in 2012. H. Thurber Stoll. Inducted at 100 years of age, Thurb Stoll's impact on Park Forest remains undiminished some 70 years after he and wife Gladys and their children moved into Park Forest. He and Gladys approached ACB and formed a kindergarten for the Will County side of Park Forest. In 1954, he was appointed to the Plan Commission, soon becoming chairman in a time when it had to meet twice a month. They were so busy. As an architect with city planning training, he became an advocate for and advisor on the Orchard Drive railroad underpasses. In 1959, he was a chair of the Commission on Human Relations and played a vital part in the peaceful integration of the village, and was also involved in the drafting of the letter. On December 24, 1959, Charles Z. Wilson's family became the first family to integrate, accomplished peacefully due to the foresight of the Commission's recommendations and the actions of many village officials and residents. Thurb helped Charles find a Christmas tree on Christmas Eve night, so his 3 preschool children could have a Christmas. The Stoll family moved in 1962 when he pursued an illustrious career in architecture. It was only by chance that our very own Jane Nickel met Thurb when his niece brought him to the Park Forest Museum for a tour to celebrate his 100th birthday, and he said, "I bet you don't know how we handled the integration." Thurb Stoll unfortunately passed away in January of 2023 at the age of 102. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the class of 2021. And now to the class of 2022. Robert and Margaret Annette. Bob and Peggy Annette moved to Park Forest in the mid-1950s, and although Bob traveled and was transferred for work between New York and Chicago, they chose to live in Park Forest on 3 separate transfers over a 15-year period. They always considered Park Forest their home away from home. The 4 Annette children, Robert, Peg, John, and Tom, attended school in the village and took part in boys' baseball and Boy and Girl Scout programs, in which their parents were active participants. They were of vital importance to the building and growth of the Church of the Holy Family, offering support, guidance, and wisdom. Bob arranged for bank financing for turning the unfinished basement into classrooms and served on numerous committees. Peggy was a leader in the Tuesday School and a member of the Altar Guild. Bob was a member of the Park Forest Bridge Club and as an award-winning player and mentor. Peggy was a member of the Garden Club, helping to plan and run the annual garden walks. Although Peggy passed in 2002 and Bob in 2017, their induction was a fitting 70th wedding anniversary memorial. Edward Zuprin. At age 7, Ed began his lengthy family business career in Park Forest by working the cash register on Saturdays at his grandfather's barber shop. There, he became a successful business owner by buying a little currency exchange for $3,000, which Ed slowly purchased from him. After a number of moves, the currency exchange has resided in Plaza West since 1984, still serving the needs of the community, taking pride in being the oldest active village business. For more than 72 years in the Park Forest Currency Exchange, operated by Ed, since he graduated college, he has been serving the community and protecting residents from fraud when other things didn't seem quite right. With knowledge shared, the police department was able to seize money through the state asset forfeiture laws to help fund purchase of equipment ranging from computers to bulletproof vests. The family is actively involved with the Back to School Illinois program, having purchased over 400 kits distributed to area school districts. They have also sponsored youth programs and athletic teams. Remaining a family-owned and operated business for more than 2 generations in the same community, as a result of local community support, is a matter of great pride to the Zuprin family. Alan and Cheryl Warsaw. Alan and Cheryl were nominated by our board for their long involvement with the Park Forest Lions Club and for personally preserving the history of the club. Alan became a member in 1971 and was deeply involved in the annual July 4th Carnival, first as a worker and later as chairperson, into the early 1990s when it was no longer permitted. He was responsible for hiring the amusement company, directing electrical and food setups, hiring bands, and personally setting off the fireworks. That sounds like fun. Whatever Alan did, Cheryl was at his side. When women were allowed to join, she became an official member as well. She was instrumental in coordinating the concession area, which included hot food, and helped sell ride tickets. The Warshaws were among a few who struggled to revive and keep the club going. When it disbanded, they personally preserved the banners, scrapbooks, and records, which they donated to the Historical Society in 2014 and 2021. By recognizing Alan and Cheryl, we also recognize all of the people who kept the Lions Club a vital participant in the life of Park Forest for so many years. Alan passed away in 2017. Homer and Charlotte Wolfe. In November 1948, in time for the tent meeting, the Wolfes moved to Court E8 in the New Village with daughters Alice and Marilyn. With Homer's degree in commercial arts and graphic design from the Art Institute, and Charlotte's teaching degree, and with college experience in politics, fundraising, music, and theater, they put their personal stamp on the early history of the community. Homer drew the first official map of the village, a copy of which is on display in our museum. Current maps, with additions of course, still follow Homer's original design. She was an active member in the early days of Park Forest Playhouse and Children's Community Theater, with Homer designing props and backdrops, and was involved in the formation of the Park Forest League of Women Voters. Homer was deeply involved with the Board of Jewish Education for many years. In his career, he drew numerous well-known company logos, including Maytag, Sealy, and Culligan, which are all still used today. Ladies and gentlemen, the class of 2022. Okay, so we're all caught up. Did we miss anybody? We're good? Everyone? Okay. Now, for the reason why we're here. You guys. To begin the induction of our class of 2023, I'd like to turn the mic over to our Master of Ceremonies for the day, former Park Forest Historical Society president and 1998 Hall of Fame inductee member, Mrs. Therese Goodrich.
Before I start with this year's Hall of Fame, I would like somebody to come up and show us what she brought with her. Mrs. Warshaw? Just tell us what you brought.
Okay. I brought a picture of my husband, Alan Warshaw, who passed away in 2017, and he deserved to be here, so he is.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Aren't we glad that we finally can be together again? The nominees this year, we're going to start, we did it alphabetically because we can never decide who is the most important. So Andrew and Georgette Gladstone will be presented by Danielle Gladstone.
Good afternoon. If I could have my brother come on up here. Come on. I said I would do the speaking, but he's going to do the standing. It brings great pleasure to be able to introduce my parents, Andrew and Georgette Gladstone, for the induction into the Park Forest Hall of Fame. My parents both have contributed tremendous measures of time, love, and dedication toward the greater good of this community. My parents' love for this village has been unconditional. Both my parents grew up in Park Forest. They both attended the grade schools and graduated at the Rich East and at Crete Money High School. After they met each other and fell in love, they decided to raise their family here as well. They wanted to raise their children in a community whose foundation believed in family and togetherness. Not only did they pass this on to us, their children, and extended family, but also to their thousands of children and students that they taught over the years. My father was a French and history teacher for most of his years at Crete Money High School. In addition, he spent time as a dean and also a coach. My mother dedicated her time as an educator, teaching reading and language arts to middle schoolers at the former Forest Trail. As a kid, I was always amazed how we could not go anywhere without them being recognized. They were often met with big hugs and smiles. When I reflect on all the programs and organizations that my parents have supported or volunteered, I am stunned at the length of the list. The list is diverse and long. My parents have served this community at almost every capacity. If only every Park Forest citizen gave in such a way. They are role models to any community. They always believed it was important to give back to the village that provided so much joy to them. My mother's passion for change began early in the 1970s. She helped form the Women's League and fight for the ERA. She pursued change and impacted lives on a greater scale that only on a greater scale other than just the classroom. My mom developed creative ways to support Park Forest youth by developing alternative programs for kids who were sighted for various activities. Young people could earn their community service hours by attending study groups or listening to educational speakers. She volunteered with the Park Forest Police Department, which led to the earning her Outstanding Educator Singer Service Award. Volunteering did not stop there. She also gave her time with the Youth Commission, Tall Grass, Park Forest Historical Society, and the Food Pantry. My mom also worked very hard as the Director of Recreation and Parks for 6 years. As a result of her efforts, she also received many more awards, such as the Good Egg Award in 2015 and the Park Forest Community Oscar Award in 2019. My father was no stranger to volunteering either. He often came along with my mom to support community projects in Park Forest. He spent countless hours helping to reimagine the parks. In the 1980s, my dad organized the first girls' fast-pitch softball team called the Park Forest Eagles. This team was quite successful and known throughout the south suburbs. His coaching took the Park Forest Eagles to the national championship. This team brought many opportunities to the girls that developed into college scholarships for some, but wonderful childhood memories for most. My father also served as a Park Forest Village trustee from 1998 to 2000. In addition, he was the president of the Cedarwood Co-ops when we lived there. The list of selfless offerings to the community of Park Forest is endless. So many times I have been told how special my parents are to this village, and I couldn't agree more. To know your life's work has meant so much to others is the ultimate compliment. I cannot think of anyone more deserving of this award. It is an honor to present this to my parents, Andrew and Georgette Gladstone.
Okay, I'm pretty sure this is 3 minutes, but...
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm changing.
Okay. In 1949, my dad came to Park Forest from New York City to scout out a new community in the making. He was a salesman and his office was located in the Merchandise Mart. He actually stayed in a rental unit before sending for my mother and me. I was about a year old. It was a long time ago, too. Settling first in the rentals, park forests became the building blocks of my life. Throughout several decades, I am so lucky to say that 5 generations of my family have lived in Park Forest, and they also became part of the history of this community. One of those building blocks has been volunteering in several organizations and working with residents who really care about our community. One resident, who just happened to be the mayor at the time, was an inspiration to me. And even though he probably does not know it, Mayor Ostenburg motivated me to do more than just volunteer. I'm gonna cry in a minute. In the late 1990s, I decided to pursue a master's degree. I was teaching the District 163 and wasn't sure if I wanted a master's in education. One day, while having coffee at Changes, a wonderful place to gather in the plaza at one time, owned by Jackie and John Ostenburg, I had a conversation with Mayor Ostenburg. I don't remember how we got on the topic, but he introduced me to a book, Beyond the Yellow Brick Road, about addiction and recovery. At that time, Just Say No, DARE, Snowball, and other drug programs were implemented in the schools. I felt that not only did the students need academic support, but emotional support as well. So as a result of that conversation, I earned a master's from GSU in health science and addictions. I was then trained at Margaret of Mercy Hospital in a mentoring program for students called CARE, Children at Risk in Education, in which at Forest Trail Junior High I facilitated a team of teachers who mentored students who were struggling academically and emotionally. It created trusting relationships between students and their mentors. Several years later, my grandson, who was about 3, was concerned about the condition of one of the parks. He told me that I needed to write to President Obama to tell him about fixing the park. So I did the next best thing. I sent an email to Rob Gunther, and he very nicely invited me to apply for the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board. Because I valued our parks and open spaces, I applied. I received a letter from Mayor Ostenburg and read that he had appointed me as chair. I was rather surprised because not only did I not know there was even an advisory board, now I was the chair. So I accepted the challenge, and with a fantastic team of volunteers on the advisory board, we were able to accomplish many things, including seasonal events that brought residents together to celebrate our parks and community. Those years being chair on the advisory board were very rewarding, and I thank you for taking a chance on someone who had no clue what she was doing. Unfortunately, COVID put everything to a halt for the next 2 years. Soon, I am sure, we will be able to meet in the parks again. Being part of Park Forest has given me a lifetime of wonderful memories. I've been in this community for 73 years. I'm grateful to a community that has nurtured me and 5 generations of my family. Thank you.
You'll have to excuse me just for a moment. Part of the problem with living in Park Forest for so long is you need glasses. I first of all would like to thank the Historical Society. It deserves much praise for preserving our heritage, and I really thank you for this most humbling induction. Park Forest has always been a family-oriented concept, but it's been an easy one to embrace. Unique in its creation, Park Forest helped raise our community children. We grew up on Marquette Street, no street other than gravel, no sidewalks. We didn't have lawns. We had muds in which we could play when it rained, which it did. And as a kid, we enjoyed it a great deal. We've been here since 1951. The Gladstones thrived and multiplied. We planned to take over Park Forest and rename it with 58 current and former family residents, we almost succeeded. When Georgette and I bought our co-op back in 1974, we faced our first village trial as a couple. We were denied entry to the co-op because Georgette's income was disallowed. Why, you may ask? Well, the answer is really quite simple. The co-op admission staff said that Georgette would become a reproductive member of society rather than a productive member. That's true. That's not a fabrication, although I can do that on occasion. The village ombudsman at the time, Don DeMarco, he helped us gain entry, and that changed antiquated thinking in Park Forest as regards women and men and what is valuable. I had had a wonderful time growing up in Park Forest, playing baseball, earning a scholarship to college, and I wanted my children to experience the same love of the game. I coached the Park Forest girls travel softball team, and we were at the 1992 ASA National Championships. I'd like to say we won. We didn't. These Park Forest girls were a delight. Many of whom became teachers, lawyers, doctors, engineers, police officers, and so much more that we as a community should be, quite frankly, grateful and most humbly pleased. During the 1990s, Park Forest was facing a truly devastating economic problem with the plaza, our current downtown. Fields, you remember Marshall Fields. I'd not like to, actually. But they decided to pick up their cookies and go wherever home was. I think it's now New York City. The Sears wanted to do the very same thing, but the village wised up and elected me trustee to ride in on my white horse and save the day. I did neither. This excellent board, and it was a truly excellent board, did its duty and did save the day, and this resulted in one of the highlights of my public life. We saved the village millions of dollars in demolition and reconstruction costs. That's effectively tax money that we didn't have to collect or pay ourselves. My latest success is recognizing the strength of my family, due to a large part because of Park Forest. Georgette and I are very proud of our son Peter and his family, especially Oliver, Josie, and Piper. You have done well with these children, Nikki and Peter, and we thank you for that. Danielle and her son Jet live just up the road, where Jet will be a Viking, not a rocket. Of course, nobody will be a rocket anymore, I guess. They are thriving, and we are grateful. And now with our induction, wherever she is, we pass into history. Not disappear as old soldiers, but rather to head in a new direction, but will always remain Park Foresters.
Boy, I'm really remembering the good old days. The next inductee, Gary Friedlund, is going to be presented by Nathan Friedlund.
It's been a long time since I gave a speech, probably high school. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Victor Friedlund, and I'm a proud resident of Park Forest. I was going to get my hair cut and trim my beard, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew who I was going to introduce. Santa Claus! No, really. Gary Victor Friedlund, my father. Gary has given an entire lifetime of service. I'm fairly certain he doesn't understand what the word no means. He has done so many things for this community. His bio in your hands is just a snippet of what he's done. Gary is a helper, a leader, a teacher, and a mentor. Lending his skills and giving opportunities to large groups and to single individuals. He has served Park Forest and the surrounding communities for over 50 years. We're also a scouting family, where service is an integral part. 3 generations of Eagle Scouts, from his father Bernie, my father himself, my older brother Jason, and myself. As a Scoutmaster, he gave generations of young men the opportunities to grow into self-sustaining individuals to serve their own communities. Gary owned Plaza Flowers, which served this community for nearly 25 years. It was truly a family affair, not only for our entire family, but other families who had multiple generations lending giant helping hands, helping celebrate birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, life's little moments of both joy and grief. Gary's landscaping and arborist services helped keep Park Forest beautiful, allowed people to take pride in their properties, and helped knit this community together. What I'm probably the most proud of him for is his journey into growing food for our community in order to help those in need. Fresh produce is needed so much in our food pantries. And Gary took the problem head on with our friend Kathy Murphy to grow all kinds of vegetables with the direct purpose of giving it away to food pantries with their nonprofit SAFE. Not only were they helping feed families, but treated the earth in a healthy and organic way. Finally, Santa Claus. I remember when he first started, how nervous he was to take on the job of being Santa. It's a big job. Once he did his first few public appearances outside of the North Pole, the joy of the children seeing him in real life and getting presents directly from him, I think gave Gary a personal joy that I can imagine cannot be matched by many other things in this world. I also know my mother, Carol, is so very proud of him too. Gary is an amazing man. He has touched many lives in our community. Those who have met him are truly lucky people. I'm so proud and honored to introduce Gary Victor Friedlund.
And I have for you the little pin that all awardees get.
Thank you. I know I have a list here somewhere. Thank you. I am humbled and honored to accept this recognition today. Thanks to the person that I felt I had made a significant contribution to Park Forest and nominate me. I still don't know who that is, but I really thank them. And thanks to all that contributed to bring the nomination to fulfillment. There are several people that I want to thank, for without their support, I would not be accepting this honor. My spouse, Carol, who supported all my crazy ideas. She's not in the best health, and she needed to stay in Germantown Hills, where we live now, near Peoria. I would also like to thank my sons Jason and Nathan, and that's only in order by age, not by importance. Although Jason would say the lesser son is younger. For they have become my counsel and my assistants throughout many of my endeavors. I would also like to thank my dear friend Kathy Murphy, who is here tonight, and she has been my partner in much of my philanthropic endeavors. I am not some famous actor who is a household name, but many of you know me, and some may not. You may know me as a businessman, a village committeeman, a farmer, a gardener, a beekeeper, a volunteer in the community serving those in need, or that mysterious being that once a year breaks into your house leaving gifts because you are on the nice versus naughty list. I'm going to interject a little story at this time. I wrote this much shorter, but obviously I'd like to share this to you since we brought up that naughty versus nice list. I wasn't always a benevolent Santa Claus. One year, back in the 1990s, I went on a blueberry hunt. We went up to Grand Haven, Michigan to buy blueberries with a friend of mine from Chicago Heights. My wife and his wife were along. And the town is a Christmas haven. In fact, there's a lot of Christmas shops in town, and we were walking through town. I had gotten a little older. My beard had changed color or had become colorless, depending how you look at it. We were walking down the street, and my buddy kept going, and in the ribs, and Carol started hitting me in the ribs, and I started to get annoyed, and I said, "Why? What are you guys doing?" And they said, "Didn't you hear that?" And I was losing my hearing, which is tough in my profession. But anyways, I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Well, look at that guy." And the guy right in front of me turned around, and his son was next to him, and he pointed at me, and I could see from his lips he was saying, "See, I told you so. You better be good." I thought that was pretty funny, and I love attention, so I just rode with it. And the rest of the time we went through town, and I did notice this at times. There's a ice cream shop called Sherman's outside on the edge of town, and we decided to go out there and get an ice cream cone. My buddy Bob said, "This is the best place to get ice cream anywhere." And we went in, and they give you this cone, and this single dip is a huge ball of ice cream on the top. So I just got a single, and I sat down, and we're eating our ice cream, and it just got all through my beard. It was about this length. I grew it much longer at times, but ice cream gets in your face real easy. So I got up and I walked into the washroom and I washed my beard out, and I came back out to sit down, and I look, and just a little bit down from my booth is this little 6-year-old girl just standing there with eyes beaming at me. And I had been clued in what was happening, and I looked over and I saw her mother, and I just motioned, "Would you like me to?" And she said, "Oh, please." And so I turned to her, the girl again, and I said, "Would you like to come and sit on Santa's lap and talk to me?" And I went and sat down in my booth, and she immediately came charging at me, jumped up on my lap, wrapped her arms around my neck, and wouldn't let go. And it warmed my heart. I never felt it. It's hard to tell the story even now. But it just gave me such a warm feeling, and that's how I started dressing in red. So when asked to accept this honor, I had to think, how is it that a man born on the near north side of Chicago and raised in a tiny farming and resort town in Wisconsin is recognized by Park Forest Historical Society? It must be fate. Or it is the allure of a community built on the values of welcoming all. At the life-changing moments for me, Park Forest was always there. When marriage to my wife Carol became a reality, Trinity Lutheran was there. When a business became a dream, Plaza Flowers was there, and the business community. When a desire to give to the community was needed, EDAG, Economic Development Advisory Group, Environmental Commission, and the St. Irenaeus Pantry and Community Garden were there. And I don't want to forget the heartwarming opportunities to give gifts to hundreds of children at the annual tree lighting ceremony in downtown Park Forest. Park Forest has given me that opportunity to do so many things in my life. And today I say thank you for that opportunity, and thank you to Park Forest Historical Society for this great honor. So until that glorious December evening, I say, and to all a good night.
Who's going to top that? Well, maybe this one will. The Honorable Raymond Funderburk, presented by Gary Kopachinski.
Thank you. Before I start talking about Ray, I want to mention that I learned why I get my Gladstones confused. It's true, you can't go 2 blocks without running into one. So, glad you're here. How many people in our lives do we not notice or take for granted? There are plenty out there in all walks of life who cry for our attention. Honor me. Put my sign in your yard or window. Or, hey, they put me in the Hall of Fame. Vote for me again. I'm talking about myself. All the while, there are those who serve quietly, reliably, who don't brag or boast or grandstand. These are people we sometimes don't see. How many have we passed over through the years? How many people of color did we pass over? It's okay to admit that we miss some exceptional people. In the spring of 1979, a friend told newly graduated lawyer Raymond Funderburk, Esquire, of what he said were very attractive, affordable, and available cooperative housing units in Park Forest. Almost as soon as he became a member of the community, he became involved with the workings of the village. That move has led to more than a 40-year career as a legal advisor to numerous commissions and committees in the area, as well as a distinguished 21-year career as a Cook County Circuit Court judge. Born in Philadelphia, I'm Pittsburgh, you're from the wrong side of the state. Mr. Funderburk arrived in Chicago in 1967 after serving 2 years in the military. After working for an insurance company, he became a bus driver for the Chicago Transportation Authority. When he left the CTA to concentrate on his studies at the University of Illinois, Chicago, he drove a bus during the summers. After earning a bachelor's degree in 1974, he followed it with a Master of Arts in Public Administration from Roosevelt University in 1975 and his Juris Doctorate degree from University of Illinois College of Law in 1978. Since being admitted to the Illinois Bar in 1979, the same year he moved to Park Forest, Mr. Funderburk became a major legal presence in the behind-the-scenes operations of numerous commissions and committees in the south suburbs. Shortly after coming to Park Forest, he became a member of the Park Forest Running and Pancake Club, which led to his becoming a valuable behind-the-scenes presence for numerous runners groups, including the storied Park Forest Scenic 10. Ray was a reliable presence every year at the 25-mile marker of the Chicago Marathon. And I learned just before the ceremony, he did that for 40 years. He organized 100 or so of us who volunteered from various groups in the Southland. He told us when to move back to make way for the runners, when to step up our efforts to provide runners with water or Gatorade. Judge Funderburk still shows every Sunday, or he's starting up again now that the weather's warmed a bit, Sunday at 8 a.m. on Chestnut Street to meet fellow runners and do his morning workout on the trail. Judge Funderburk became fully involved with the intricacies of village life, serving one term on the Park Forest Library Board and as chairman of the village's Housing Review Board, the Housing Board of Appeals, the Equal Opportunity Review Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. He also served on the School District 227 Advisory Board and the Legal Advisory Board for Aunt Martha's Services. Additionally, he was on the executive committee of the Far South Suburban Branch of the NAACP and on the committee that worked to create Old Plank Trail. You've been busy. First appointed a Cook County judge in 1993, he was re-elected 3 times before retiring in 2018. Judge Funderburk serves as a moderator for numerous candidate forums sponsored by the Park Forest Committee for Nonpartisan Local Government. For more than 20 years, he has served as moderator for the annual town meeting of the Rich Township Government. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ray from my early days in Park Forest when I was still a runner. In 2003, I asked if he would swear me into the Park Forest Board of Trustees, and he did. and did so again when I asked again. As I reflect back through the years, I'm moved by his commitment to equity, justice, and integrity. Even in casual conversations while running on the trail Sunday with him before he outran me, Ray always spoke and acted with decorum and honor. Ray Funderburk is easily one of the most ethical people I've ever had the chance of knowing. So it is my honor to say, Judge Funderburk, we see you. We thank you. We welcome you to the Park Forest Hall of Fame.
There's some things I never knew about you. This isn't what everyone gets to have.
Great,
So now
thanks.
the podium
Thanks.
is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Gary, for those very kind remarks. I appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a couple things that I'd like to amplify and clarify. First of all, let me say that I think most of you have heard of Philadelphia, Mississippi. I have heard of Philadelphia, Mississippi, but I was not born in Philadelphia, Mississippi. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have nothing against Mississippi, but I just wanted to clarify that. Let me also say that to our mayor-elect and elect officials, fellow inductees, residents of Park Forest, friends, good afternoon. I wish to also give thanks to God for bringing me to this point and bringing all of us to this point in our lives. All honor and praise to God. It is indeed a pleasure to have been here, to be here today, and I'm deeply honored and extremely grateful and certainly very humbled by this honor that has been bestowed upon me today. Let me say that I did not get here alone. There are many people who influenced me and influenced my life on this very, very tumultuous road to this very point. I'd like to first of all give thanks to my deceased parents, Inez and Walter Funderburk of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I also like to give thanks to my maternal and paternal aunts and uncle and grandparents, both paternal and paternal grandparents. My aunts and uncle, all of them are deceased except one paternal aunt who lives in Sherrill, South Carolina, Aunt Viola Bridges. I certainly like to give thanks to all of my paternal aunts and uncles. I have a host of relatives around the country in various states. I'd like to certainly acknowledge first my sister, Carolyn Sterling, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Also, a cousin of mine in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You know what I say, Pennsylvania. Prentice Funderburk, otherwise known as Chuckle Funderburk, Chuck. And I do want to thank my sister and Chuck for all of their support, and throughout the years they have been supportive of my efforts. I also like to give thanks to relatives that I have in South Carolina, in the state of South Carolina, especially to my cousin, Wallace Funderburk in Sherrill, South Carolina, and a host of other cousins in South Carolina. Now, let me say, my grandparents had 18 children. So that provided me with and caused me to have a host of aunts, uncles, cousins, numerous aunts, uncles, and cousins around the country, and I certainly like to give thanks to them today. A little bit about myself. I like to say what I call a line of demarcation. That is, the time before I went into the military, the United States Army, and the time after I came out of the United States Army. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of my experiences before I went into the United States Army. I was drafted in the military in September of 1965. I would say that I like to say that I was shipped off to the Army because I certainly did not want to go and did not want to be drafted, but I was shipped off to the Army anyway, and I did not go to Vietnam. I went in during the Vietnam era. However, I was stationed for the most part in Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico sounds like a luscious Caribbean island, and it is, but I hated it. I can't say enough for the mosquitoes in Puerto Rico. I can't say enough for the rain every day in Puerto Rico, and I hated it. But I was there for 18 months, and I was glad when my tour of duty came to an end and I was able to leave what we call the Rock. Let me also say that 1958 was perhaps the worst year of my life. I was 14 years of age at that time, and I just simply got into what's called a lot of stuff, all kinds of trouble. I even had to stay in a youth rehabilitation center for 90 days in 1958. So 1958, I don't talk about very much, and I can't change the past, but 1958 happens to have been, I think, the worst year of my life. Also, for whatever it's worth, and I'm admitting it today, that I was not very successful in high school in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, I've flunked retail sales in the 11th grade, and I was scheduled then, I would have graduated with my sister, who was a year behind me. That would have been the most embarrassing thing for me, to graduate with my younger sister out of high school. So instead of doing that, I decided, listen carefully, I decided to drop out. So I dropped out of high school before, when I was in the 11th grade, when I knew that I wasn't going to graduate. Also, I decided that, let me say that prior to my dropping out of high school, I purchased a 1955 Ford Fairlane convertible. And I paid $250 for that vehicle. Now, you can't get anything for $250 today, but the vehicle cost $250. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even have a driver's license to drive it. The person that I bought it from had to drive it home for me. When we arrived at my home, my mother, for the first time now, saw this 1955 Ford convertible, and she was shocked out of her mind. And she wanted to know all about it and how it is that I came to pay the $250 for it. And the salesman, the owner, indicated that I paid the $250, that it was my car, and he was going to park it on our street in front of our house, and he did. So now I was the proud owner of a 1955 Ford convertible, Fairlane 500. As I indicated, in 1965, I was inducted into the United States Army, and that was at the ripe old age of, I believe, 20 or 21 that I was inducted into the Army. And again, as I've indicated previously, that is a line of demarcation in my life. After entering into the Army, let me say, before going into the Army, I used to drink heavily. I used to enjoy Gordon's gin and Coca-Cola with a twist of lemon. And I admit that 2021, I drank that quite a bit. I did not become chemically dependent, but I certainly enjoyed the drink. I have to also say that the language of the day was that I drank like a fish. And I did. I drank like a fish. But going into the Army was a whole new, different life for me. I learned to respect authority, as you have to in the Army. I learned to become more responsible, and I did. I also learned to follow orders, which in the Army and in the military, you have to. So it was a different life for me. I was discharged from the military in 1967, in August of 1967, and I went back to Philadelphia. Well, let me say that I was discharged in New York in August of 1967. And I had saved up enough money that I was able to buy a 1967 Ford. A gentleman had a 1967 Ford for sale on this car lot in New York. I purchased it and drove to Philadelphia with my cousin from New York. But once arriving in Philadelphia, I then met up with a childhood friend of mine, Levester Fountain. And he and I decided that we would leave Philadelphia. So 4 weeks after arriving in Philadelphia, after I came out of the military, my buddy and I, Levester, we left Philadelphia and intended to head to Chicago, head also to Detroit to visit a friend from Philadelphia who lived at that time in Detroit. So we did leave Philadelphia and headed out. We arrived in Chicago in October of 1967. As a matter of fact, we arrived on Halloween night in October of 1967, and we stayed with my buddy's relatives on the west side of Chicago. And we stayed with them for a period of time, at least a couple of months. During the interim, I was able to get a job of secure employment with the Mammoth Insurance Company. I worked for the Mammoth Insurance Company for a period of time, and I then was able to get a job as a bus operator with the Chicago Transit Authority. Let me say that when I first applied for the position as a bus operator, I went to the Urban Progress Center. And the Urban Progress Center on the west side of Chicago indicated that whenever they get young men in looking for employment, they would send them to the Chicago Transit Authority. So I got sent to the Chicago Transit Authority. I was hired as a bus operator. My buddy was not hired, and he returned to Philadelphia. I then remained on the west side of Chicago and completed and started my studies at Olive Harvey Junior College. And I then went to, when I graduated from Olive Harvey Junior College, I went to the University of Illinois, obtained and earned a bachelor's degree at the University of Illinois. I then went to Roosevelt University and earned a master's degree in public administration at Roosevelt University. I have to tell you that while at the University of Illinois, there was a recruiter that came from The Ohio State University. And the recruiter indicated he was there on campus for at least 2 weeks. I then was told to come to the dean's office, and I did, and I met with the recruiter and the dean. The recruiter said in front of the dean and told me that he had been on campus for a couple of weeks and he had selected 2 people to come to the Ohio State University to study for the master's degree program in public administration. I stand corrected, in political science, and also for a doctor's degree in political science at The Ohio State University. I'll have to say that I waited and waited and waited and waited to hear from The Ohio State University, and I did not for a long period of time. So I was residing and living at Roosevelt University, so I decided to enroll in the public administration program at Roosevelt University, and I did. Once I enrolled in the program, I then decided that I wanted to go to law school. So The program at Roosevelt was a 2-year program. I completed the program in 1 year, and during that time I was in the process of applying for law school at various law schools, and I got accepted at the University of Illinois along with other law schools, and I then attended the University of Illinois. I graduated from the University of Illinois College of Law in 1978, and I returned to the Chicago area. Let me also say that while I was in law school, generally people interview with various law firms and attempt to get employment while in law school. I did not do so because I had my mind set on returning to Chicago and working in the law department for the Chicago Transit Authority. Now, I'm going to say that I did come back to Chicago. I did go to Human Relations for the Chicago Transit Authority, and I indicated that I wanted to work in the law department. I was told very politely, young man, in order to get into the law department at the Chicago Transit Authority, you must have a political sponsor. Well, I didn't have a political sponsor, so there ended my efforts to gain employment at the Chicago Transit Authority in the law department. I started working with the Better Government Association, and I was paid out of petty cash at the Better Government Association. That shows you how much money I was earning at the Better Government Association. So after that, I became employed by the Cook County Legal Assistance Foundation, and I started out at the Oak Park office at the Cook County Legal Assistance Foundation, and then I was transferred to the Harvey office of the Cook County Legal Assistance Foundation. And there, a colleague of mine told me that there were cooperative units in Park Forest, and I decided to look into that. And I was able to get a cooperative unit in Park Forest. So I relocated and moved to Park Forest in 1979. As a runner, and I'm sure as all you runners in here can appreciate, I went out for a jog one day, and I was jogging through the Sauk Trail woods on 26th Street, and I ran into a young lady that I lived at Roosevelt University with, Sharon Hicks, later to be known as Sharon Hicks Bartley. I don't know if Dave is here or not, but Sharon Hicks Bartley. She told me about the Park Forest Pancake and Running Club. She introduced me to the Park Forest Pancake and Running Club, and I've been involved with the Park Forest Pancake and Running Club ever since then, along with my good buddy who I saw earlier, Margaret Brady. And I also have to say that afterwards there is the Jones in a Cable. I had a cable TV program on Jones in a Cable called Know Your Rights. I heard of a young lady who was giving a speech at the Harvey Library on various senior instruments, durable powers of attorney for health care, and I decided that that young lady would be an excellent person to have on my program on Jones in a Cable, Know Your Rights. So I contacted the Harvey Library and had that young lady to contact me. She did. She appeared on the program, and we later had dinner after the program along with the other guest that was on the program, and we had dinner a few days later. That lady is named Alfreda Livingston. We were married within 6 months, and she indicated that well, she was quite spunky and quite feisty, let me say. She indicated that she was not changing her name from Livingston. Her name was going to remain Livingston. She also gave me, as an example, the situation of Elizabeth Taylor. She said that had Liz Taylor changed her name every time that she was married, that they wouldn't recognize who she was at the Social Security Administration. And so Alfreda Livingston indicated that she was not changing her name. So she said she was coming. I can't tell if she's here or not, but if she is, thank you, Alfreda, for all the years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for being so long-winded. I appreciate your attention, and I also have to mention my fraternity and my fraternity brothers, the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, especially Eugene Blackwell, George Reeves, and Warren S. Moore. They've been quite an influence on my life, and I'd like to thank them and certainly make mention again of my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Thank you very much.
I might mention that Judge Funderburk was the one that swore me in when I was a trustee in Park Forest, and then again when I became a trustee at Rich Township. So I thank you very much for being here today. The next person who is going to have been nominated, I think all of you probably know, but we're going to let him be presented by Warren Woods, John Ostenburg.
Thank you. I think I know most of the people out there in this crowd. Just a quick introduction. I'm Warren Wood, and I've lived in Park Forest since February of 1954. So it's a long time. And we still, my wife and I, Jeanette Rodriguez Wood, still live over in Westwood. So just a little bit of reference for those of you who didn't know who I am. I've known John Ostenburg a long time. I can't tell you exactly the date I met him. There are a lot of dates in here, but one of the most important things that I thought in looking at his nomination was the fact that John took over leadership with the General Assembly and in Park Forest and committed a third of a century to that work, with partnerships in local government and national government, statewide. People thought of John as a person of character that did the work to find out how to get the solutions in place. I remember when John was running for state representative, and one of the things I offered to do is some canvassing in the Asteroid Cooperative, and it's a pretty simple process for those that have done political canvassing. You're just identifying who your supporters are, little plus marks, finding out who really lives at the address, never mind what it said on the form they gave you initially, and minuses for those are going to support the other side, and if people aren't home, mark who you're going to go back and see again. And at the end of the day, a couple of the volunteers couldn't show up and do this work, so I ended up doing all of Eastgate in addition to all of Ash Street, and I had little notes in the margins of every kind of thing, people complaining about their neighbors, people complaining about their neighborhoods, a lot of them not knowing who their current trustee at the state level was, or even who their village leaders were. So I came back with all my little notes and scratches and thought, well, I'm done for the day. I'm 4 hours in of having gone door to door. And John said to me, well, no, I want to know what did everybody have to say? What did you find out? And he took the time to take another hour and ask me, well, when they said this, what did you say about it? How did you respond? Can you tell me how to find this issue or that issue again? He did the work, and I was just so impressed with that. I'd worked with other political candidates who wanted to get it done. He wanted to do the work and really understand the issues. Same thing was true when he came over in Park Forest and when he did his work in the co-ops and with state boards and national boards. John is a person of character that does the work to find out how to get things done. I had a big laugh when I was the president of the Ash Street Housing Cooperative, and John had Area B, and he'd been doing it a long time already, and I shared with him some of my frustrations, and instead of giving me a whole speech or a pat answer, I said, well, I listen to these people come in with their complaints, and we never see them for a whole year, and then when they have a complaint, they show up at the board meeting and want to take 10 minutes of our time, 20 minutes of our time, and I spend an hour listening to these things. And he said right away, don't. Just don't, that they've got time to come see you beforehand. They've got time to come to a subcommittee to talk about their issues. If you cave into this, and I really thought that I was doing people a favor by holding a meeting for 3.5 hours. I certainly wasn't. John gave me insight into how to do a much better job with it. In terms of his work with Park Forest, 20 years leading the village board and, a 4-year term before that as a trustee. So he's really contributed to many administrations. He contributed to many projects that have changed the way the village was developed. One of his largest insights is in your book. It's the Growing Green Park Forest Sustainability. It's a model for how a lot of communities are now beginning to address something that he was tackling years and years ago. Sustainability in Park Forest is still a big issue and will continue to be a big issue. One of the things that John did is he was a principal member of the National League of Cities. In the forefront of that in terms of showing some leadership, working collaborative with other people, some of which had really strong relationships in their communities, and some that were really struggling with very, very large issues as we have here, and finding the answers to get things done. I think maybe one of the last things I want to say in this introduction is I learned about the work that John was doing really early on from a friend of mine when I first started at Aunt Martha's. I met with a guy named Doug Price, who originally wrote the nomination that you see in the booklet. And Doug and I worked in social services for a couple of years together before his career path changed. And one of the things that he always said about John was that he's not going to give you the easy solution. He's going to try you to look at the details, to dig deep, to find out what's really going on, and to solve the problems. And I was so impressed with that. And I've gone back to John many times, whether it was what we were doing together with things like Youth Day or other projects, just kind of going over a dialogue of how we can make things better. I'm very impressed and thankful to be able to do the nomination for John Ostenburg.
And now you get one of these to stick in your pocket and wear when you can.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you all very much for being here. I have to say that, I've had the opportunity to be honored a lot of times with some prestigious people, but this class is really, in my mind, one of the best. And it's partly because I have known virtually every one of them for a long time. Gary Friedlund and I were members of the Rotary Club in Park Forest back in the 1980s, and I had the opportunity to introduce Santa Claus to those children every Christmas. So it was a great pleasure. Ray Funderburk and I met, I don't know whether he remembers or not, but the late Marge Friedman, who was an activist in our community, community, she decided at one of the Democratic dinners that Ray and I were both attending that we should sit next to each other. And I remember she telling me that you need to know this man. He's going to go someplace. And sure enough, Judge Funderburk has gone on to do many things. The Gladstones, Andy and I served on the board together, and Georgette mentioned the fact that she was the chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Group. I have to tell you, not only was she the chair, she was an absolutely outstanding chair of that group. So it was a pleasure working with the Gladstones. And then we have Dave Rudolf. Now, there's many things you can say about Dave Rudolf, but I have to tell you the thing that I find most impressive about Dave Rudolf is the fact that there is this song by Don McLean that's called American Pie. Some of you may have heard it. It runs for 9 minutes. And at least twice at Changes Coffee House, Dave sang the entire thing from memory. So that, what an accomplishment that is. So it's a prestigious group that I have the opportunity to be with. I want to thank my family members who are here. I don't say much about my family usually when I'm speaking because Doug Price always would say, he cries. And unfortunately, I do that when I talk about things that are personal, so I'm not going to say much in that regard. I want to say, though, that, many times people get recognized for things, and it's really a lot of other people who have done the work that got them to where they are. And that's really how I humbly feel today. There are so many people who work so very hard on campaigns that I ran in, trustees. Over 27 years of being on the village board, I guess I probably served with more trustees and more village presidents than anybody else in the history of our community, all of whom contributed outstandingly to what our community needed, and I think that many of them aren't recognized for what they did. Instead, those of us who kind of are at the top of the list, we get the recognition, and really the recognition should go to all of those who carry on a day-to-day basis the hard work of our community. And in my mind, there is nobody who deserves that recognition more than our village manager. Tom Mick is an outstanding village manager. He heads an outstanding village staff that has accomplished so much for our municipality. Just one item that people are unaware of, and they really need to know. There was a 3-year period in the village of Park Forest where the village received more than $30 million in outside funding, grants and outside funding. 3 years, that's 36 months, $30 million. That's almost $1 million a month that came to the village of Park Forest. That was during my time as mayor. I used to brag about it at campaign times, but it wasn't I that did that work. It was our village staff under our manager's leadership. And we are blessed as a community that we have outstanding talent that works for us. And we're doubly blessed that we have an outstanding village board. And I have to say, maybe because I just feel a personal kinship with him, an outstanding incoming village president or mayor. So all that being said, I'm not going to take any more time other than to say thank you very much. I'm humbled and honored.
I think we should have Tom come up sometime. The next nomination is going to be made by Steve Wing for Dave Rudolf.
Last but not least, right? Like several other people on the panel here, I am here to introduce my father, Dave Rudolf. I'm sorry, that's kind of a cheap joke to start out. But anyway, I guess I should get back to the text here.
I'm Steve Wing. I'm a lifelong park forester. My parents moved here in 1949 when I was in the oven. I'm one of the wise guys that sings with Dave once in a while. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And I'm here, of course, to introduce Dave Rudolf. Dave was born in Chicago and raised in Bradley, Illinois, and in 1972, he graduated from Western Illinois University, go Leathernecks, and he started working at the Manteno State Mental Hospital. And I know what you're thinking. Was he a patient, or did he actually work there? And he did collect a check, so I understand that he actually did work there. And he worked there for 2 years full-time, and then he got the bug for playing music and writing music, and he went to part-time for the next 2 years and would go to bars and places like the Ground Round and things like that in the area and sing. So he and his wife Carol moved to Park Forest in 1975. In 1976, he took the plunge and he decided to quit work and become a musician professionally. I'm sure that worried Carol a little bit. So he went on to a music career. That was the year also that he produced his first album. His fan base grew, and he traveled across the country performing in numerous college campuses. This led to him receiving 15 nominations for Entertainer of the Year by the National Association of Campus Activities. Your program, he's got a whole bunch of awards that he's gotten, so you can look at that list in the program. After his sons Todd and Ryan were born, Dave began writing and performing for kids. That was his main source of income. These shows were wild affairs. I don't know if any of you have ever been to one of them, but he's got bubble machines, flying beach balls, squirt guns, hula hoops. The kids became part of the show, and they really loved it. And this all was depicted. It's all depicted on the building. There's a big mural on the side of the building in the plaza with a picture of Dave singing to kids. If you ever take a chance, look at that. I first met Dave playing basketball in the Park Forest Rec Center. We played on Saturday afternoons and Monday nights, and none of us knew the last names of anybody. We just knew first names. So we were only on a first name basis. Then one night in the 70s, my wife Peggy and I decided to go to the Ground Round, and we heard that there was this singer-songwriter guy, Dave Rudolf. I had no idea who he was. So we went, and as soon as he walked on this little stage, I go, I know that guy. He used to foul me all the time in basketball. So after he was done, I walked up to him and we started talking, and then we became good buddies. Our wives became friends, and Dave's brother-in-law, Jim Frells, and his wife, Patty, the six of us became good friends, and we formed the Wise Guys later on. But let's see. For over 30 years, Dave orchestrated a show here at Freedom Hall in conjunction with the Star newspaper's Project Share. This theater was packed with families who looked forward to the annual tradition, and since all entertainers donated their time, lots of canned goods and all financial proceeds went to help folks in need. A lot of work was put forth by Dave. He had to put this thing together. It was real complicated for him, and he donated, of course, all of his time. Dave, Jim Frells, and I became the three Wise Guys, and we sang Dave's fractured lyrics to Christmas carols, wearing Burger King crowns and choir robes that I got from Faith Church. So In 2005, Dave got some really bad news. He was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer with a 10% chance of survival. His esophagus, this is kind of gross, his esophagus had to be removed and his stomach had to be stretched up to replace his esophagus. He remarkably got through all that, and now when he says he's full up to here, he truly is full up to here. Dave and his wife Carol still live in Park Forest, and Dave is still producing albums in his recording studio in the basement of his house. Now he has 2 grandkids, Zoe and Rhett, who join in all the fun. Just last night, Dave introduced his 42nd album at Egger's Place, which is the coffee house at the Unitarian Church on Western Avenue. He not only performs there, but regularly books all of their musical acts. The Wise Guys were there, now singing the music of the 60s and 70s, and his son Ryan was accompanying us on bass guitar. Due to Dave's advanced age, his songs are geared to adults now. As he says in his song, "You're getting old." When he has a birthday, the candles cost more than the cake. So it's my pleasure to now introduce to you the miracle Dave Rudolf.
Oh, look, they're leaving now.
Wow. This is the pin that all of the inductees got.
Thank you so much. B5, I-22. I have a pin now. I was hoping for a parking space, but seriously, thank you very much for this honor, and thank you for the Hysterical Society. I thought it would be a hysterical society rather than historical, but thank you for that. And they do all the work as usual, as John so aptly put. You know, some of us stand up here, but there are so many people behind the scenes that deserve the credit for when he was talking about the 30 years we did the annual thing. All the performers donated their time. We had people taking money. We had other things. So there were so many people. You know, sometimes you're the one elevated, but it's really everybody. And all the people who do the little dirty work behind the thing. It's like when you go to regular work, it's the workers in the thing, not the boss, that get the work done. So I just want to thank you. I'll keep this short because I know we've been here a while and you probably, like me, my sciatic is acting up. So I just want to thank everybody, thank my wife. I've had a very weird career over the years. I've done a bunch of weird stuff. Like in 1996, I was the Captain Kangaroo in the new TV pilot. And so, I mean, it's weird because you start one way and you end up in the middle and then you end at the end and it's not anywhere where you thought it would be. But through it all, I have my wife and my kids and my friends, and I'm honored to be amongst these inductees. They all deserve it. Please give them a hand, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you. Have a great day.
How about one more hand for our class of 2023? So thanks to all of the members of a class of 2023, as well as the members of 2021 and 22 that we were finally able to recognize publicly today. If you'd like to continue learning more about these or any of our other fine inductees over the years, please visit our website, parkforesthistory.org/Hall of Fame. All of their accomplishments and names and links to that are there on the website. The plaques with all the names are also on display in the 1950s Park Forest House Museum over on Money Road. We encourage you to visit them there. Hopefully one day they'll be back in Village Hall for all to see on a daily basis. Let me see, what else? Hold on, what can I cut? What can I cut? What can I cut? So for all this, hearing all these stories and doing all this work to preserve not just this history, but all that we've done in the past and what we need to do in the future, we continue to ask the community for your help. Please consider volunteering with the Society if you don't already. It is a challenge to keep our doors to our museum and our archive open with very limited staff. So if you're able to share 2-3 hours a month, and that's the kind of work you would like to contribute to, we would welcome you with open arms. Our museum represents what the original townhome might have looked like in the first 5 years of the village, as many of these people here have alluded to here today. So it's quite the experience to walk through our museum and to learn about Park Forest in that way, if you have not already. Or if you haven't been there in a while, we do change it up, so you're welcome to come on back. And we do that so we can pass the history of Park Forest on to future generations. Speaking of the next generation, nominations for next year's Hall of Fame will run from October 1st until December 31st. So if you know of someone, or you've thought, someone else should be on that stage next year, please be on the lookout for our website, our Facebook, our Twitter. We have all the information there if you'd like to nominate someone for next year. That will begin on October 1st. So, remember that we're always telling the history of the story of Park Forest, but it's up to you to get people nominated so we can induct them here into the Hall of Fame. So look to your left and look to your right, because someone you know should be nominated next year. Once again, congratulations to all of our inductees. Thank you all for coming, and please have a great night. Thank you so much.